Hello, and thank you for joining us. We will be starting the webinar in just a minute, and we just going to give everyone a chance to log in. Thanks. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Miro Consulting webinar on Microsoft Core licensing changes. We'll begin the webinar in just one moment. Okay, thank you for joining us. This is the Microsoft Core licensing changes webinar by Miro Consulting. My name is Sean Donahue. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Miro Consulting, and the presentation today will be given by Vince Allison, our Senior Microsoft Analyst. A Senior Microsoft Analyst at Miro. Vince, can you go to the next slide? Vince, you might have to click the center console and then hit down arrow. Vince, can you go to the next slide? All right, we seem to be having a little technical difficulty. If you could just bear with us one moment. Okay, I'm just going to switch to a different presenter here. So just give me one moment. So it looks like, yes, he's just having a bit of temporary difficulty. Just give me one moment and we will begin the presentation. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Okay, since we are having a little bit of difficulty with Vince's connection, Tim, I will ask you to pinch hit here for me. All right. So while we're waiting to get connected, just to give you a quick background, this is Miro Consulting, and we are a leading global provider of software asset management and subscription management services for Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, Amazon Web Services, and Salesforce. We specialize in license management, audit advisory, negotiation tactics, support management, and cloud services. Our mission is to help our clients reduce their, maximize their ROI on software license and subscription investments, stay in compliance, and negotiate successful contracts and audit settlements. And the best part is there's no risk to doing business with us. We have a performance guarantee, and that is that the amount of your cost savings will be greater than our fees. All right. So before we begin, we just would like to do a quick poll. We like to believe that, it's good to share information both ways. We're going to share information with you. So we always like to find out basically what services are you using now? Now, obviously, this whole change has a lot to do with Microsoft changing the rules around third-party clouds. And if you guys might know, that was very much prompted by the Europeans. European stuff, what they were doing. They didn't like the way Microsoft was doing its best practices. So they decided to change. They forced basically Microsoft to kind of change how it works. So this is the new sort of system they're doing, and we will continue with the presentation. Thank you very much. If you're going to give me an answer, give it to me by now. As not surprising, a lot of you are using Azure. A lot of you are using AWS. Not as much GCP, I see, the Google Cloud system. But that's very interesting to see. All right. Thank you very much for your answers, and we're going to keep going with the presentation. All right. So we've seen a number of licensing changes over the years with Microsoft, as they both sort of changed and adapted to how they were trying to more or less build their cloud environment, transition their on-premise team, or their on-premise installs like the Windows servers, things like that, into the cloud, and different rules around licensing mobility. So in this presentation, we're sort of going to address those and kind of why they happened. Previously to this, only BizTalk and SQL Server were the ones that you could license by physical cores or the virtual core supporting this instances. Now, Microsoft has not released any new information indicating that servers may be moving to a different core model. Tim, did you have anything you want to put on this slide?
Well, just the idea that we're really talking about the essentially the biggest change over the course of this past year was that Microsoft started to license Windows Server in a virtual mode. So everything else you said was absolutely 100% true. And that is this is you know, kind of following BizTalk and SQL Server. You can still license in a physical mode or in the virtual mode, but now you can. But Microsoft is now allowing Windows Server to be licensed in that mode as well.
Excellent, thank you. All right, 1 second here. Okay, so next slide. Tim, if you could take, it seems like Vince is having some technical difficulties. So Tim, can you take over from here?
Sure.
Excellent, thank you, Tim. Go ahead.
So what, like I was saying, the Windows Server is required licensing by the physical host, irrespective of the number of virtual instances, or whether there were any virtual instances on it. You know, think of domain name servers or print and file services servers. But now Windows has an option to license each virtual instance of itself, and that could stand to have a little bit of a cost savings opportunity for you.
Excellent, excellent. And Tim, just let me know, since I'm running the presentation, ready for the next slide?
Okay, yes, I am.
All right. There you go.
This is just more on that topic. In the past, licensing by the host was required, irrespective of what role it played in your organization. And customers, with the release of Windows 2022 and down to 16, were really required to stack licenses, and this affected Windows Standard primarily, and then that changed. It used to be that for every virtual server or pair of virtual servers that Windows Server Standard was going to support, you would have to purchase another license. Now you have to relicense the entirety of the host in order to be eligible for just 2 more virtual instances. Now, that doesn't mean that stacking has gone away, but it has changed that dynamic. So clearly, Microsoft is looking at Windows Server Data Center, which is far more costly, about 8 times the price, for heavy virtualization scenarios. Next slide. Now, licensing by virtual instance does provide, as I indicated, some cost saving opportunities, but you have to realize that it is not always the cheapest option. And very few of our clients have actually made that switch, primarily in the cloud. Whereas, licensing on premise by virtual core on a hardware level is is the way that most of our clients have gone.
And Tim, you said that's because it's do they typically go into these situations thinking it's cheaper, or do they know ahead of time, or how does that usually work?
No, it's usually large providers using the cloud, large organizations using the cloud as as an option. That's where they really see the cost savings versus a BYOL type of situation where they're going to get going to license on a one-for-one basis for every virtual server in the cloud. And we all know that the cloud is full of virtual servers, except for dedicated instances, et cetera, and so on.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not be aware, BYOL means bring your own license.
Oh,
So
yes,
essentially, yeah, it's just we didn't usually cover it. Most people are familiar with the term these days, but just in case anyone isn't, essentially it means you already purchased a license for the product on premise. Microsoft is more than happy to move you to the cloud, but you don't obviously want to buy the whole license again, so you can move it with. And Tim, remind me here, I think it says just for our audience here, the listed providers. Accepted one. So this is a whitelist. So effectively, you have to be on it. I think who was the one? Was it Amazon is the one major player who's not on Microsoft's list of the listed providers?
No, the listed providers are authorized currently are Alibaba, Microsoft itself, obviously, as well as AWS and Amazon, and there's one other one,
Is OCI?
but the list is very short.
Yeah, I thought so. So is Oracle? Do we know if Oracle's on that list? Oracle's
No,
gone?
it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Good to know. So yeah, so
And that is despite the agreement that has been reached tentatively and allegedly between Oracle and Microsoft.
Yeah, I haven't seen much from that. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, so I've got another poll from my audience here. So we're talking about servers here, and we're basically, have you reviewed your Windows Server uses based on the new Windows Server licensing term? So let me launch my poll here. So basically, we're kind of just curious to see how many people out there have sort of started their reviews, how many people are planning to, how many maybe aren't going to do it at all. It's a big job for a lot of organizations. We've had many clients who mid-project have found out they have so much more than they originally thought they have. So, it's one of those things where it might be a heavy lifting job depending on how many people you have in your, how large your estate is in your organization. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty even split. I see most of you have not started it yet. A few of you are in the process. Hey, because some of you have already done it. Congratulations. You guys are way out ahead of the game. I'll give you another 10 seconds here if you want to answer my poll. And of course, I'm going to be sharing all the answers with the people who gave me information. So if you want to see it afterward, please give me an answer, and I will send you what the crowd is thinking, and so you can see where you are. All right, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to end the poll now. And again, I'm going to share the results with you guys after the event today. All right, so let's go to our next one. Tim, can you tell us more about how this SQL server core licensing changes here?
Well, there has been very little change to SQL Server core licenses, but it has to do with extended security updates for which SQL Server 12 is in its second year. It is an option for people to go to the cloud because SQL Server 12 will entail a fourth year of support if the allocation is made in Azure.
Okay, sounds good. All right. And one of the things I will also quickly point out, if you are thinking about moving to the cloud and you do the math that says, oh, hey, I'm going to have less licensing costs in the cloud. Great. However, we always like to warn our clients, make sure you're looking at your additional expenses. One of the big additional expenses that we find many clients overlook is the cost of the data transfer. So what they don't think about is, am I moving a large amount of data off-site and then bringing it right back on site in kind of a loop process? We found clients who did that, and they said, wow, this is going to blow our costs out of the water. It negates the whole thing. But we've also had other clients that said, oh, this helps us so much. This particular client, it helped them close their books at stores across the country. So for sometimes it's really worth it. And sometimes if you ignore the additional costs, it's almost like buying a house. If you do ignore those additional costs, you might get a real false sense of what your total costs are going to be. Tim?
Some licensing considerations, right? SQL Server Enterprise licensed in conjunction with Windows Server Data Center allows you to spin up, if you will, any number of virtual instances, and any number of them can have SQL Server attached to them. And that includes both SQL Server Standard and Enterprise. Now, that is a very costly situation. So unless you are both prepared for that, as well as you have the reason for that, for that to occur, for example, a hosting provider who doesn't necessarily have a handle on the number of virtual instances or the number of SQL Server instances that are attached to them, that would be a case for this SQL Server licensing situation in conjunction with Windows Server Data Center. Now, SQL Server Standard can only be licensed. SQL Server Standard can be licensed by in a Server Plus Cal or client access license mode, or the per core. SQL Server Enterprise Edition must be licensed on a virtual core or the 2-core pack or a 16-core pack or somewhere in between. Now, it's very important to recognize that any portion of SQL Server, including the reporting services or the database services, or et cetera, and so on, constitutes an allocation or an assignment of those licenses. And those licenses cannot be split. So if you have a 16-core license, 16-pack license, you could not put those or allocate those across 2 8-core servers because you have only one license. So that is that's a cautionary tale. But choosing the wrong licensing model, Vince has put here licensing costs over 300%. That's at minimum. That's at minimum. So, could we have the next slide?
Yeah, and Tim, before I just want to also jump in there, this is, again, I want to say, you guys, this is one of the most common issues that we find when people
Yep.
try to they either try to do their own licensing on their own, or they try to allocate and figure out what their costs are going to be. And we find very frequently they run into issues with these minimums and these packs, where they plan on using 10 and they don't realize that they only come in batches of 8, so they need 16, or likewise, something along the lines of, like Tim just said, they buy something thinking they're going to split it up and they cannot. And we also find similar situations where people will think they're going to split it between 2 different servers, their backup and their main. Things like that, the rules vary based on products. So if that is something you are doing, you probably should double check that that is all within the rules. Get you the next slide.
Mhm. When this slide has to do more with the way that the MLS is ran. Licensing is also often in 2 packs. So you would have to divide the number of licenses you have by 2 if you have that license in the 2 core pack mode, in order to come up with the number of true cores that are licensed. Now, that does not imply that that means the number of servers. Rather, that means that is the number of cores that you have licensed across all your servers. So this can be a surprise, as the same is true for Windows Server licensed in the 2 core pack, or any other product of Microsoft that is listed in that same way. And that is that the cores are different than the actual license number.
And Tim, is this one of those times where hyperthreading can come into play and change your licensing counts dramatically?
Well, SQL Server is primarily a victim, can we say, of hyperthreading, whereas Windows Server is not. If you have a hyperthreading active, which is the process of multiplying the core by the number of threads, that is licensed, or SQL Server is licensed by thread, in spite of the fact that it says core. So
yeah, something to watch out for if you didn't pick up on. So again, guys, if you're using hyperthreading,
hyperthreading is the default for most new servers that are spun up, and B, that it does very little in terms of applications. While SQL Server, the software, might take advantage of it, a particular application may not, and most of the time it's spent in the application versus in software itself.
That's interesting. So you might, at a base performance level, it may look like you're getting value, but at a higher level, at the apps, like you're saying, that app might just not be able to handle the power.
That's correct. That's correct.
And we just talked about, you just addressed this. I'm sorry, there's a slide behind. Yes, it is on by default.
Yes.
And again, if you don't have a license, if you're not counting that, this is one of the most common issues we find. So if you are using hyperthreading, it is really best to reach out to an expert and just double check, make sure that your counts are what you think they are and your licensing. And like I said, with something we could help you with, But like we always advise, if not us, then you want to talk to someone. And what I would really advise you as well is you want to talk to someone other than your reseller. So if you have a Microsoft reseller, what you should be aware is your Microsoft reseller is obligated to report on you to Microsoft if they find you in a non-compliant position. So it is always best to get an independent and confidential verification of your environment, so that if there's any problems or you've got a planned environment, run that by some specialists. Don't get caught in a situation where you were either the license is going to be twice as much as you thought it was going to be, or maybe you don't have it, you get audited down the road, and that can really be expensive. So let's keep going here. All right. So we have another one of our polls we're going to ask. Give me a moment. If anybody who's used Zoom Info knows it loves to put wherever the button is you need to push, it's got a Zoom Info window over it. Okay. So here's our next one. So effectively, where do you think you're going to land in terms of costs? Is this going to make things more expensive for you or less? And of course, you know, I'll have to warn you, rarely do vendors make changes that require their customers to pay them less money. Sometimes they'll do it for simplification reasons, and that's just the end result. But we think it's going to be a little different. So we've seen it across the board right now. It's a bit mixed when reviewing some potential plans and potential environments. How's this going to change this? Are they going to be taking advantage of it? A lot of our customers are pretty excited. They see it as an opportunity to not have as many unused licenses. But again, whether their specific environments are going to really be able to take advantage of these changes or really be hurt by these changes, it's very individual. So if you're reading anything out there about this is going to be good for you, this is going to be bad for you, take it with a grain of salt. It's really going to come down to your specific environment. I'll give you another 5 seconds if you want to give me an answer. You want to give it to me now. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for answering this. And we're going to do one more after this. So the next one we're going to do here is audit. So I mentioned audits. So if Microsoft came to you today and you got that letter in the mail, and it will come in the mail, if you get a letter saying that you are formally being audited by Microsoft because they believe that you are you're using more software or different or whatever, you're not in compliance and they've had enough and they're going to come audit you. If you would be compliant today, do you think you would pass? Do you think you'd maybe pass? You'd probably pass. Some of you out there, definitely. I admire your confidence. Nobody wants me. All right. So guys, another 10 seconds here and I'll end this one. But again, it'd be interesting if you want to know where your fellow people who have your job at other organizations, you know, this is a bit of a niche thing. A lot of us probably do the exact same role at these different organizations. You might be IT, you might be procurement, you might be like an engineering, you might be a CIO, CTO. Those are the people we typically have in our audience here, and you'll be able to see what your peers think if you give me an answer. All right, I'll give you another 5 seconds if you're going to answer it. All right, guys, thank you very much. Let's keep going on here. All right. I'll just do some of these takeaways before Tim jumps in here. Like I said, these changes are going to be, they're options. That's what you got to think of. They're options. They probably won't, you probably won't have to change anything. You're probably going to be fine. The difference is, you know, does this change affect the way you're going to do licenses? Are you going to have not enough? Are you going to have some extras? Are you going to be able to break things up a little bit different? And one of the things we also make sure our clients know when they're moving to the cloud, we recommend get your on-premise environment in compliance first before you move to the cloud. We've seen a lot of organizations, they plan out this whole cloud move, and all they do is move their problem from on-premise to the cloud, and they're just as non-compliant. The other thing we really recommend our clients do is make sure that that cloud architecture is not more or less powerful than maybe the same thing you have on premise, because sometimes they're different. Sometimes they'll be a little faster, a little slower, a little bit more capacity, a little less, even if they look like they're exactly the same. So benchmark those models in the cloud. It's really easy to do for your specific needs and your workloads. Don't just assume that the cloud version of the server is going to behave exactly like the on-premise one. And again, if you have any concerns with all of those things, Miro can help you. We can. There are other organizations too. We were not saying we're the only game in town, but we believe we're the best. And like I said, we have a performance guarantee, which means that working with us won't have any risk. We always are able to save our clients more money than the cost of our fees. And usually that keeps going down the road. They save every year after that. So we've been able to help a lot of them do some significant cost savings. Like I said before, if you're going to have somebody look at it, don't make it your reseller. Your reseller is pretty much the worst. Also, don't call Microsoft and say, hey, I think I might be out of compliance. Yeah, don't do that. We've seen people do that. We highly recommend against doing that, because Microsoft will go, hey, maybe you are. I'll send somebody over to check. And again, and while we're here also, I want to give you guys a real quick gotcha. One of the big important ones that we have found. One of the things I want you to watch out for is if you ever get a person emailing you, you get an email from some random, looks like a Microsoft reseller, random IT company, and they ask you to fill out a server worksheet. Very specific. First off, don't do that. Second off, look for the letter V. Their name, their email address, right? Their email address will have a V and then a dash, and then it'll look like a regular email address. If you see what we call those V emails, letter V as in Victor, those are a scam. Those are unscrupulous Microsoft resellers who are hoping that you divulge yourself to be out of compliance, and then they try to strong arm you into buying licenses from them. They will very typically send these letters out to your junior IT staff. So if your company does not have some sort of software asset management plan in place, where you are training your employees to say, if the vendor calls you and starts asking questions, say no. Say no, you have to talk. Only one person or organization can talk to you. So again, if you do not have a software asset management plan that informs your employees not to give away too much information, you should do that right away. Slide. All right. And Tim, can you just do the takeaways on this one? Because make sure I want you to get this, make sure I get this correct.
Well, I would just add that the licensing of Microsoft Server, Windows Server, came about as you had indicated, Sean, from Europe. So that is a case where the I'm sorry.
Regulators.
Yeah, the regulators have caused Microsoft to make some changes. I suspect that there will be some more changes to this, but that is always a case. Now, as far as SQL Server, Microsoft has a plethora of information available for you, often in conflicting modes, but they explain relatively little. But we have found that SQL Server is the most common product for which a compliance exists, or a non-compliant situation exists. And this has to do with the new servers and their default setting of hyperthreading and so on and so forth. So if you have SQL Server, or if you're considering SQL Server, please come to us. And then non-compliance is a term. We won't go into the various types of audits there are, but suffice it to say that you are on the hook for not only, you could be on the hook for not only the cost of the audit itself, but also you would be charged at the highest price possible, which represents a penalty to you. So those are a little bit more in the way of surprises, but there are also some valid takeaways from this process.
Yeah, and that's a good point for any of my procurement people who are on the call. That is something to really think about, because you're not talking about being penalized at the license price, which you might receive a very steep discount based on your volume. So it is not that price that they will penalize. They will go full blast at you for not following the rules. And like Tim said, some organizations put out very, very little, and it's very difficult to know your compliance position. Other organizations put out very, very much, like Microsoft, and unfortunately, it conflicts sometimes. And especially when we get non-experts who are decide to interpret it on their own. There's a lot of bad advice out there. So we recommend going with tried and true experts. And we're almost through. Guys, if you have any questions, I have a question today, a Q&A session. Please send it in here. And while we're doing my last bit, real quick. So we encourage you to review your Microsoft services. If you are looking for some help and just having never to worry about that again, we have a wonderful program for licensing managed services, licensing subscriptions. We will help your organization stay compliant all the time. You'll never have to do a big compliance review again. You'll never have to worry about an audit again. Everything's taken care of. Turnkey bespoke services. We have a lot of our clients take advantage of this simply because they've just been, it takes too much of their time to do these mammoth time and place projects where it's very much easier just to keep it clean as you go. So again, I will send you guys some information on that in case it's something you'd like to look into. And let me see what else we do have a couple questions. I have seen a couple of you guys. I can tell you right now, the answer is that it is your situation is probably a little too unique. We will get back to. I do have a few questions here, actually. Let me pull up my questions real quick. So the questions we got asked were, for Windows Server, how would cost savings be realized? Tim?
Primarily, this is for larger organizations that have Windows in a BYOL situation. They should consider licensing Windows Server by virtual instance with the hope of reducing that cost. We can actually compare those costs for you.
Excellent, excellent. So I got another one from the audience. Can these changes affect an enterprise agreement prior to renewal? What about true-up?
Typically, the changes will not take place during a enterprise renewal or an enterprise agreement, but during a renewal, you will find that the new licensing has some teeth.
And Tim, the true-up would be before that. So I guess it would not, you'd still be under the old rules if you did true-up.
That is correct.
Excellent. If you guys don't know, true-up with Microsoft is essentially, you go to Microsoft and say, hey, look, I'm actually using some stuff more than I realized. Microsoft says, okay, thank you for being honest about it. I'll sell you these additional licenses to cover what you are doing. However, guys, there's another one I want you to know, a little bit of a secret one. We can do something called a true down, where we reduce your licensing costs in the same way that they might go up in a true up. We can take them down in a true down. So if that's something you're interested in, contact us after the event. Okay, I got another question. Is the hyper-threading on new purchases, does it affect existing SKUs?
Yes, it does.
Excellent. That is something to go for. We have time for a couple more. Guys, if you're going to give them to me now. I'm going to do one more here. For SQL Server, can you speak to extended security updates?
Extended security updates require that active software assurance be active on the products. Now, SQL Server and Windows Server are among those products that have extended security updates or ESUs. The ESUs do not adhere to any kind of a guideline in terms of prior versions, and the ESUs for SQL Server and Windows Server 2008 are gone, including Azure, because it is now 2023. But 2020 or 2012 and 2012 R2, as I indicated, the SQL Server is in its second year. Its first year has passed in July, and the Windows Server will start its first year in October. So if you have those versions, either upgrade them, convert them to the cloud, or upgrade them. Or if you don't have if you don't have software assurance, you're stuck.
All right, a number of people just have been asking, will this webinar be recorded? Yes, it absolutely is. Yes, we will absolutely send you a recording after the event. So we can definitely take care of you there. We're also going to send you our brand new Microsoft licensing guide, so you have a reference. It's fresh for 2023, and it specializes in helping you understand where are all these products. Are some of them still only on-premise? Are some of them only clouds? Are some of them hybrid? So it'll be able to help. And again, if you are, I had a couple of people ask, what is the best way to figure out how many servers I actually have that need to be licensed at what level, et cetera? And the answer is, well, you could try to do it yourself, but we don't recommend that because, you know, it's one of those things where it could cost you a hell of a lot of money if you get it wrong. Best thing to do is talk to an expert like Miro. We can make sure that you find the right one. Like I've said, we've had clients who found out they had whole server farms they didn't know about that somebody had left off of a sheet somewhere. So, you know, there's always, we always joke, there's always another server hiding somewhere in a closet or something. So the best thing to do is hire some outside experts, again, who are not your reseller, because your reseller is really Microsoft. It works for Microsoft more than you. So again, that is going to end it with today. Thank you very much to everyone prepared. Thank you again for standing by with us while we had a brief bit of technical difficulties. And again, like I said, we're going to follow up with you with all this information. That is going to be it. Thank you again, everyone. This is the end of the webinar. Have a great day.